Yes, Bernie came down to Cottonwood, and our son-in-law drove him around and showed him all the different places, and he stopped in at the Community Health Center and the Rec Center and the Mayor's City Hall.
Yeah.
So he really enjoyed it. He loves to go around and just talk to everybody. So
Beautiful.
we were supposed to be on vacation, but he just doesn't know how to do that.
Well, it's good that he has a good work ethic.
He does.
I mean, it shows, and the consistency shows as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
What are your plans for First Lady? If you could, I mean, if you had, you've done social work before in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You were president of Burlington College and another college as well.
Got it.
What are your, if you could help the country, what ways would you help the country as First Lady?
I think I'd focus, as I always have, on children and families, and try to improve the quality of life and lessen the stress in whatever way possible. So I'd mostly be supporting Bernie in whatever he's trying to do. And then I think what I'd like to do is go out to the communities that don't really have much of a voice in this country and help their voices resonate with the rest of the country so that their voices can be heard. And I've just had a fantastic time today meeting with the Navajo Nation and the Hopi tribe, and we learned so much, and I think people need to know more.
Yeah. Especially in rural areas, in populated areas and in urban areas that do not have good infrastructure to sustain an economy or life in a healthy degree, at all in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's no electricity up on the reservation in some parts of the Navajo reservation.
Yeah.
And you're going to Oak Flats tomorrow.
Yes.
Because there's a situation there where there's a mining company that's trying to grab lands. And could you elaborate and talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure. In the Department of Defense authorization bill a couple of years ago,
That McCain drafted?
McCain, Jeff Flake, a few people. And actually it was, I think, the 13th time they meaning any Congress people, had been trying to get it through. And this time they did it at the end of the night, and which often happens with the legislation. Just put it in, and the Department of Defense authorization had to be approved, so that there was a provision in there to give some of the land, the Oak Flat land in Tonto Forest, mining rights to a foreign mining company, and it's just unconscionable. I mean, we're taking the land from the Native Americans, we're taking the resources from them. It's going to be the largest copper mine in North America, and all the assets are going out of the country. I don't understand where the economic benefit is for America or for the Navajo, the Apache tribe.
Can you elaborate what you could do for the people of the Black Mesa area to help improve the water, the aquifer, address the horrific, and Flint, Michigan as well?
We're having problems with water throughout the country. I mean, West Virginia, Mississippi, here in Arizona, and it's funny that nobody really was paying attention to it until recently. We need to deal with that. We need to recognize that corporations shouldn't have the ability to damage the water system through fracking, through uranium mining. I mean, one of the things that's been nice to hear is Congressman Grijalva, Raul Grijalva, has introduced legislation to deal with that up in the Grand Canyon, to ban it for uranium mining forever. He also brought in the Save Oak Flats legislation. He introduced that in the House, and Bernie introduced it in the Senate, which would negate the sale of that of those copper mining rights. So, and yesterday or this week, the Oak Flat area was put on the historic preservation list. So that should roll that back. So I think what we have to do is attack each one of these water system problems separately and say, what's the cause, what's the fix, and how quickly can we do it? And there's the question, a lot of other countries regulate aquifers, and we don't do that, and I don't I don't quite understand that, and I don't know if my husband would want to do that, but
Yes.
it's something, it's interesting to be talking to people and hearing about all the things that they're dealing with, and through fracking or coal mining, uranium. He has a plan to do $1 trillion in infrastructure, which would create 13 million jobs. It's necessary. If this isn't evidence, I don't know what is, because we're dealing with health issues.
Yes. Would he support like a media fairness doctrine, giving people time on? Because I know he's done this with elections, from giving candidates equal balance election time, funding it. Would he be this for doing this for like a media fairness doctrine, giving people free time and we have the internet, but for television?
Well, they have that. I mean, for instance, Donald Trump was on Saturday Night Live, and they had to give time for anybody who asked for the same amount of time on entertainment shows. What has happened is news has become entertainment.
Yes.
And now we have all Trump all the time on the news stations, and there is no fairness doctrine there. So I think after this election, the news media is going to really have to be a little bit reflective and say, how did we cover this campaign? And was it fair? Was it accurate? Was it helpful for our democracy? And I think the answer on all three is no. I think that they have given rise to Donald Trump, and if I were a Republican running, I would have been furious, because his whole rally would be on TV because they were waiting for him to say something outrageous over and over and over again. And then there have been some studies done that said that Bernie had 10 minutes of time compared to hundreds and hundreds of minutes with Donald Trump in 2015. So we're not going to worry about that. One of the things that's been very good for us is the online. The fact that young people get their news now online, and they are they're vocal about what they think, and they share a lot of good stories. So we've been very lucky in that. If this was 20 years ago, I don't know that he would have been able to resonate as much as he had.
Absolutely
because they
not.
wouldn't have heard him.
No. No, absolutely not.
So.
But in the 90s, they made it where, I think Colin Powell's son, Michael Powell, head of the FCC at the time, made it where you can no longer show coffins coming home of American troops on television. Would you think your husband, or would you either support a legislation to make this actually a visible thing to the American public? Because we're not really seeing the cost of the wars. We're talking about distraction. We're talking about distractions all the time instead of the actual the psychological, the economic, the physiological toll on people living in this country and people abroad.
Well, I grew up with the Vietnam War, and that it was the pictures on television that told people what was happening. And I think at that time people took it very seriously, what they covered, what they showed, they unvarnished truth. But now it seems that we're going to one place, and then like we'll be in Ferguson, Missouri, or in Baltimore, Maryland, and be covering all these different things, or in Syria, and now we're not there. So it's out of everybody's mind. It seems to be all one thing all the time, on no matter how many choices you have. So, and I think that's why young people are finding their news for their own liking, to find out, okay, I want to know about Syria, even if CNN is no longer concerned about it.
On the note of young people, your husband, his campaign is doing wildly popular with younger adults. Has he always been good with kids?
He has. As mayor, he used to speak at all the elementary, middle, and high schools. As senator, he went around the entire state and talked to people. So, and he's taught college at Harvard and Hamilton. So we both just realized that the perspective that young people have, a fresh perspective, a curiosity, a sense of what's fair and what's right. They are idealistic and optimistic, and we need to all, have a little bit more of that and move forward.
Your husband has introduced legislation to ban private prisons.
Yes.
He's to legalize marijuana, taking it off of the controlled substances
Right.
list.
And leaving it up to the states as to whether or not to legalize it.
To let the states come up with their own policy as opposed to a federal government which tells each individual state how to regulate something. So in some ways I think your husband's somewhat of a conservative.
He is in some ways. I mean, in terms of, he doesn't want people telling other people what to do. He wants the people in a community to make the decisions that are best for them.
He stated he would retroactively let people out of prison too for certain nonviolent crimes, I believe.
Yeah. We have too many people in jail.
A lot of people don't know that 51% of the federal discretionary budget is the military. And then there's even more cost in addition to that that's kind of sneaked in some ways. He said that he'd cut the budget of the military industrial complex. What, can you give us any insight to this? What is
Well, there are a
policy?
number of things. It's the one area of government that cannot be audited because it's just too complicated. So first we're going to break it down and get it less complicated and audit each section of the military. In terms of budget, I mean, he's always talked about cuts and also making sure that the contractors, I mean, we have contractors that have been defrauding the government and then they get contracts anyway. So we need to look at that. We need to look at a number of things, get rid of a lot of the old boondoggles that just keep on coming, and individual senators or congressmen say, we need this because it's in my district, it creates jobs. Well, let's create other jobs. Let's create jobs fixing our bridges and our dams and our levees instead of creating jobs to build outdated military equipment.
Yes.
So I think what you'd see with Bernie is a reprioritization of the federal government's budget that actually dealt with what people need, what not individual corporations or what lobbyists are clamoring for, but what will benefit and increase the better the quality of life for the average American.
On a note, you said your husband would, he said that he would continue the drone program in some cases. Has he ever given a thought about abolishing it? Because right now, according to a Gallup poll, a lot of the world thinks that the United States is the biggest terrorist purveyor of violence. And that's a national poll here, but it's taken from people abroad. Has he any thought about just abolishing it?
I think that that has been a feeling of the United States for quite some time now. And what he would be doing in terms of military or in terms of foreign policy is moving away from regime change and starting to just continuing to insert ourselves into foreign affairs that didn't have an impact on the lives of Americans. We've seen way too many regime change things over the last 50 years. In terms of the drones, I think that President Obama has cut back and has provided some oversight in it, which I think was sorely needed, and he would continue that. But I don't think that he would say, no, we're not going to do it at all, because it's one tool in the toolbox.
Okay.
So I would just close with saying that we need to invigorate our democracy. We need to increase voter participation. When there's a large voter turnout, Bernie does very, very well.
Yes.
When there's a low voter turnout, he loses. And so if people are interested in transforming this nation, to have it be the America that we all know that it can be, where people are working together to deal with the issues like climate change and to provide health care and affordable education to everybody regardless of financial circumstances. People need to vote. This is the election where they can come out and they can actually transform America if they vote in this primary and then in the November election. And we're hopeful that on the 22nd, that Arizonans will come out and support Bernie. The one thing I would say is that what's been wonderful for me going around the country is that I find that the more people get to know Bernie, the more they support him, which is an enviable position to be in, that he just is, he is who he says he is, he fights really hard for what he believes in, and all you have to do is look at Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine, our closest neighbors, who voted overwhelmingly. They know him best, and they all voted overwhelmingly for him in the primary.
Thank you so much. Could you talk about the TTP and sweatshops and after? I'm sorry, I had to ask.
Yeah.
I just,
Okay.
it was a great honor. Thank you
I
so
can
much.
just say on the TPP that Bernie has been against it since the beginning.
Yes.
He's voted against NAFTA, CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, and he has been leading the effort against the TPP. His opponent has been on the opposite side on most of them, and he believes very strongly that we need fair trade, not just free trade, trade that creates jobs in America and then supports people on both sides of the border to have a better life.
And reinstate Glass-Steagall, in other words.
Absolutely.
Policies.
Reinstating Glass-Steagall and breaking up the big banks. You've been listening.
Thank
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks a lot.